Welcome, Mr. Sergio Manaña. You're currently one of the most important representatives of a very ancient American tradition, the Mexican Mexica and Toltec tradition. Something that the majority of people are not aware of is that both Toltecs and Mexicans possess in turn an extraordinary calendar which is just as old as the Mayan calendar but profoundly different from it. These days everybody's talking about the Mayan calendar in the year 2012, so you're extremely welcome because we really want to understand what you have to say on the matter. Everybody's talking about it, so what is the opinion of your tradition on the matter?
Hola a todos.
Good morning, everybody. Well, as far as this matter is concerned, so much has been said, but actually the Mayan calendar, as well as the Mexica calendar, which belongs to the Aztec tradition, which in turn is a derivation of the Toltecuacana and the Tolteca traditions, derives from previous calendars, such as the Mixtec Zapoteca calendar, that is to say, civilizations which had established themselves in Mexico, in the Pacific region, before them. Therefore, both calendars, the Mexica and the Mayan, are derivations of that ancestral calendar, and they both present similar cycles, and then in turn, each adapted symbols of their calendar to animals that belong to their environment, but they're very close. There are affinities between the two of them, but there are differences between them as far as the calculations of the bigger cycles. So much has been said about the end of the world, but this is not what the Mayans are saying. For them, it is simply the end of the bigger cycle. Now, I'm not a specialist in, as far as the Mayan calendar is concerned, but I think it's in the region of 5,000 years. But these calendars, these sort of circular-shaped calendars, when you approach the end of a calendar, it's not the end of everything. They're cyclical calendars. What it means that one cycle is coming to an end and there's the beginning of the next one. But given that this is not specified, the people who don't know it and never spoken to the real guardians of the tradition, they think it's the end, whereas it's just the end of a cycle. Now, if we're talking about our calendar, the Mexican calendar, if we look it up on the internet under Mayan calendar, many sites will show the sunstone, and this information is it's a real disaster. It's terrible because the sunstone belongs to our calendar. So we already have a problem at the sort of image level you can imagine in terms of its content. The very well-known image from our calendar is the big sunstone, where you can actually see the sun with the tongue hanging out, and this signifies the solar justice. This represents a real feat of prowess because, unlike the Mayan calendar, which is divided into many cycles, in our calendar, the Mexican calendar, all cycles are all assembled into one. So the entire mechanism of the universe, it's all enclosed within one symbol. Now, if we now talk about the cycles, in our calendar, the sun cycles are the most important aspect. The measurements, they go from short sun cycles, such as the rotation of the sun around itself, to longer ones, such as the rotation of the Earth around the sun, where we find common things such as solstice and equinox, all the way to much bigger cycles, such as the revolution of our entire solar system, of our star, around the Pleiades.
Todo nuestro calendario está basado como en 4 movimientos. En sí, el movimiento de nuestro Sol alrededor de las Pleiades es de 26.500 años. Si lo divides entre
our entire calendar is based on the recurrence of 4 movements. So if the revolution of our sun around the Pleiades lasts 26,500 years, and if you divide this by 4, then you end up with 6,625. And this period is called a sun. Now, this entire business of the year 2012 got to do with the end of one of these periods, or suns. Nothing more than that. It's just a subdivision of the revolution of our sun around the central sun of the Pleiades. And there's a lot of misinformation to do with this point. Whether it's the end of the world, no one's ever found it anywhere, because the guardians of the tradition have never said it like that. But other people have created their own interpretation. It doesn't work like, in our case, that at the end of December we're in 2010 and the 1st of January is 2011. Differently from our calendar, this calendar is in keeping with nature. So dawn is the transition between darkness and light. It's like an adjustment, a transition. So before the new sun comes in, there's a similar transition where the two suns coexist. 2012 is just one of the dates of this transition, and people and popular culture, they have no idea about the rest. The sixth sun has entered into the kingdom of the fifth in 1991, and it's then that the transition started to take place. The two suns will have equal power on this famous date of 21st of December 2012. But this date does not mark neither the entrance of the sixth sun nor the end of the world, just the parity of power between the two. Then between 2012 and 2021, the fifth sun will just exit, and this is the most complex aspect of this entire movement. And the sixth sun will start reigning unaided by itself only in 2021. Many things are happening at this time, because the end of a cycle corresponds invariably to some big changes. In the Mexican tradition, the exiting sun is supported by the symbol of the dog. It's quintly in Nahuatl. And the sun, supported by the dog, will repeat itself every 100,000 years or so. And the characteristic of this is that it's man defining the laws of mankind. And this is the phase we just lived through. But now we're moving on to the next symbol, Ocelocoyotl, the monkey. And the change is enormous, because it's nature that will reign over earth and mankind, and this is what is beginning to happen here. The fifth sun is called Tepatlitonatl, the sun of justice, and this is what it means, this tongue hanging out of the sun, but this is not exactly a tongue. This is like the dagger of justice. Everything that we have created from within the waking state, the tonal, has its counterpart that hardly anyone wants to observe in the sleeping state, the nagual. It's very easy to refuse what we create in the sleeping state. What we do in the waking state, we all take responsibility for, allegedly. But in this case, we're talking about taking responsibility for all that we do, even in the sleeping state, everything that we create on a collective basis. So when the fifth sun exits, what we get out of justice and not out of punishment is everything that we have created. So in this transition, but also according to this tradition, the only reality is movement. So especially in this period, the universe is in motion. And denying this movement because we want to remain anchored to all structures, what's the result of this? It's our distraction. So we're talking about a very personal decision for whoever decides to abandon the old structures and flow with the universal change up to the point of transformation. So this period will become very, very favorable. The four forces that are supporting the universe and ourselves, what we call Tezcatlipoca, one of which is this famous Ocelocoyotl, are represented in the calendar at a spiritual, astronomical, and human level. At an astronomical level, for instance, the black Tezcatlipoca is represented by the center of the galaxy, by the night, by everything which in the cosmos is darkness. The red Tezcatlipoca is represented by the Milky Way. The blue one, otherwise known as Ocelocoyotl, is represented by the sun, by dawn, by Mercury, by Mars, and the white Tezcatlipoca, the Quetzalcoatl, whose return in terms of conscience or entity is represented by the midday sun and the planet Venus. In the year 2012, there will be an alignment, because normally these four Tezcatlipocas or forces are represented in a square which supports the universe. In the alignment of these four signs, the square will dissolve and will form a straight line, which we call the disappearance of time. In the period which surrounds the alignment of these bodies into a straight line as opposed to a square, naturally things will become accelerated. They'll become much faster. Good things as well as bad things. We live in a dual world where distraction and light both manifest more rapidly. And this makes this time very interesting, that can lead us to personal catastrophe or to the light, and much more rapidly. But this is a very personal decision. Nothing is set in stone. The way you choose to live, that's what you'll actually get. These are the times we're living in. This transition between two big periods is simply the opportunity for a change of consciousness. In this period, we can observe some dramatic changes at a planetary and environmental level. And all this is evident to all of us. And this is precisely the reason why people are afraid at present, because they think that Mother Earth will not survive. So what do you think about all this?
Esta es una pregunta muy interesante.
This is a very interesting question.
Que me digas
because
que
when we're talking
la
about,
Madre Tierra no va a
when someone
sobrevivir,
says that Mother Earth will not survive, all the guardians of the Amerindian tradition will simply burst out laughing. Because this is really human arrogance that makes us believe that we can actually stab God. We do not have the power to kill Mother Earth, because she can just give us a quick shake and we will all disappear. It's actually critical to understand that Mother Earth, like the sun, in herself, she is in a process of change and transformation, which at the universal level is like an energy wave that presents itself every 6,625 years. So people are less afraid from what is going to happen than from the sheer quantity of information. Each transition takes us back to the image of a crisis. If we take the Aztec calendar and we examine the symbols, amongst the symbols of each of the suns, there are some claws which mean destruction. Destruction of the pre-existing model of life, and this destruction that we live. Each time there is a transition of this kind. But destruction is always creation of something new. And that's the first thing we need to look at. For instance, for the guardians of this tradition, the fifth sun, as I just said, the Tepatli-Tonatlu, the sun of justice, is recounted in the traditional chronicle, translated directly, is the sun of justice that will end up with earthquakes and we'll all die. This is a very strong statement, but we mustn't take it literally. Actually, earthquake here means, of course, it means the physical type of earthquake, as we can well see. It's the beginning of the most complex and critical period of the fifth sun, which we cannot find anywhere else, but it is really present in the ancient Mexican chronicles. The fifth sun will make an exit from the stage in 2021, and 2012 is the point where the fifth and the sixth sun will have equal power, and its exit from scene will be much more intense than we've seen so far. So we need to be ready for this. But earthquake also means that many internal structures will break down, and that will be very positive for the earth. We will just demolish some of those structures, some of those religious, political, economic structures, etc., which are causing so much suffering. So we will all die, in the sense we will all change in a physical sense, even though many will actually die. We cannot deny this process, because whoever denies to themselves the possibility of change, the movement of the universe will force them a transformation, and the final transformation obviously is death. Death is another form of life, but if we don't pay attention, as the ancient traditions tell us, death will make us face the same challenges we have not overcome whilst alive. So what we haven't done whilst alive, we'll have to do when we're dead. So it's elementary, isn't it? All the knowledge that is emerging from the authentic guardians of the tradition is actually to make us stay alive on this planet and throughout this transition, so that we can move and change. And whoever will be able to do it will live through this phase like through a golden age, manifesting real miracles in the field of healing and transformation, things which would have been impossible under the preceding energy pattern. And whoever denies this change will, in any case, inevitably have to transform themselves anyway. Their structures will just drop one way or another, and this is the exit from the scene of the fifth sun. This movement of the universe is inevitable, so the best thing to do is actually to play along with it and adapt to it. Otherwise, we'll just have to bear the consequences. Now, when it comes to the climate, solar activity is actually on the increase. The Mayan guardians say, and my tradition doesn't talk about these things because we're further away from the coast, they say that it's happened many times that our pyramids, they say, have gone underwater and then they've just re-emerged several times. So what they say is actually very different from the official story, the official version. Logically, we're just coming out of a period of a lesser solar activity, which we could even consider a sort of night. When dawn breaks, there's more light. If there's more light, there's more heat. And if there's more heat, the poles will just melt. This is global warming, there are climatic changes. But this does not mean that the species will disappear. It means adapting to a new style of life that, as I've said, goes from the dog to the monkey. And the rules will be dictated by Mother Nature. And we will just have to follow them. But this could be a great feast for the world, which will take us back to recover the balance between man and nature. We will go back to that form of communion, to that holy condition. Changes for the people who will be able to observe them that way will be amazing, extraordinary, but the people that will not be able to adapt to them will just find some sort of justice, some sort of retribution, and will just have to transform themselves anyway. They'll do it when dead, but they will have to do it. There's a lot to do. To clean the shadows, to renew ourselves, to go back to re-establish the holy contact with nature. Not to mention that mankind has completely neglected the dream dimension, which is equally creator of reality. And so we can start to cultivate the capacity of master of dreams, so that we can then reach the level of Quetzalcoatl and all its relative knowledge, extremely sophisticated. So for me, this time, this period, instead of a source of great fear, is actually living a great challenge, the great personal challenge of finding myself in a period where information is easily accessible to transform ourselves, something that wasn't available beforehand. But it remains always a personal decision. Actually, the sun, as our tradition describes in the most beautiful way, possesses two aspects, two variations. The Quetzalcoatl Tonatiuh, which is the son of Quetzalcoatl, which gives warmth, knowledge, light and transformation, and the Quetzalcoatl, which is the sun that causes droughts, strong winds and hurricanes, which on the one hand obviously warms up the surface of the earth, but on the other hand is the cause of earthquakes and of personal cataclysms. Once again, where to be remains a personal decision, whether in the Quetzalcoatl or in the Tezcatlipoca. The decision is yours, and this is the moment to act.